There's amazing things happening in this room, and I'm honored to stand before you. No worries. So this is me. Many of you know me. This is my bio in the age of social media, right? But there's one piece of this puzzle, and people ask me all the time, how do you define yourself? And I typically say, just go read this. Just go look. There's all sorts of words that I can use. But there's one term that for many years I shied away from, and that was activism. It was a scary word to me. This idea of activism was so radical. So something that I want to introduce you to that'll sort of be a through line for the next few minutes as I'm talking to you is the idea of citizen activism. Because I think that that is a bucket into which I'm very proud to put myself now. And I'm really enthused by the idea of associating with this community of activists. So I want to take you back in time, not so many years ago, to little Erin. Little Erin grew up right here. This is where I went to school from when I was 5 years old until I was 14. That was my kindergarten classroom right there. This is where I graduated from. And I thought that this campus was how everyone grew up. I thought that you did water testing in the bay. I thought that you caught tadpoles in your hands, catch and release at recess. I thought that you ran up the mountain if you got in trouble during PE. And I grew up with this beautifully warped norm. The values of this school were respect, responsibility, and compassion. Of my high school here in Marin as well were think, question, create. I was taught to think critically. You guys have met my incredible mother. Those are the sort of values she instilled in me from the beginning. And there was this one quote, which was on the wall of my first grade classroom, that my mom spoke to all the time. The idea that if you weren't going to do it, who was going to do it? That it didn't take the masses, that it took one coupled with another. And that's really all you needed in your life in order to bring about change. And when I was about 10 years old, there was a study that came out here in this idyllic paradise on Paradise Drive that Marin County had the highest breast, prostate, and melanoma cancer rates in the world. No one knew why, and there wasn't enough money to do the testing. And my mom came home, she went to a meeting at the supervisors here, and they said, basically, we're sorry that people are dying and no one knows why. Step back. And that wasn't enough for my mom, and she organized a door-to-door campaign to go around to tens of thousands of households on one day and ask the question, why? So I just actually talked in Indiana last week with a bunch of middle school students, and they taught me this idea of a problem tree, which I love. So cancer's the problem, right? This is literally taken from a group of 10 to 12-year-olds. Okay, cancer's the problem. So what are the root causes? Because that's what they're thinking about, going into their communities and thinking about what is causing these issues. So what came up out of asking people why they thought cancer was so high? Demographics, a predominantly Caucasian community of Eastern European descent. That there was a plane that crashed on Mount Tam and had been polluting the groundwater supply, that it was water off the Farallon Islands after World War II. The Army had dumped nuclear waste and poked holes to make it sink more rapidly. Or that it was lifestyle choices, that it's something to do with the sorts of choices we were making day to day. And they worked with the Department of Epidemiology at UCSF. We started thinking, okay, how do you not just go for the cure? How do you go back? How do you search for the cause, which was the name of the campaign my mom started? How do you mitigate risk? How do you live by a precautionary principle by just saying, if something might cause you harm and you have another option, choose the other option. And so we focused in on this idea of lifestyle choices because there was a study that came out that suddenly resonated with me. Ashley talked about seeing polar bears and going, doesn't have to do with me. I was going, high cancer rates, I live a healthy life. But I never delved into the fact that Britney Spears was a spokesperson for Herbal Essences, that Maybelline Full and Soft Mascara was in my pencil case, that these chemicals were ubiquitous. And that was the impetus to start turning green, because you couldn't just sit there and choose apathy. That's the largest problem plaguing our world today. And in this realm, I love this, again, shared with me by a student in Australia, this idea that global warming is depressing, that it's massive, that it's inactionable, but when you break it down, there's something that everyone can do. There is an entry point. You cannot do it all, but we're a part of this beautiful web, and we all are working towards the same common goal, and maybe if we do step up, we can do something. So we started Turning Green in January of 2005 around personal care products and expanded to look, I've talked about it, you've heard it, textiles, home, dorm space, these sorts of ideas. But we were a bunch of ragtag teenagers. And that was completely ballistic. It made no sense that we could change the world. It really makes no sense that any of you think you can do a damn thing. It doesn't. The world's a bleak, terrible place, news flash. What can you do? If you were rational, you'd go cry in a hole somewhere. Okay? Seriously. I've contemplated that. It gets overwhelming. So you gotta dare to be unreasonable. You gotta shake the status quo, and that is why I love working with you all. I'm not that much older than you. I'm 24 years old. We think maybe there's a chance we're not so jaded. We go there. We take those risks. So these are all risks. These are all experiments. We've said, hey, is prom a good time to talk about these issues? Maybe, maybe not. Is dorm a good time? Yeah, seems like it makes sense. Oh, people liked that. Students like it. So stuff has had traction, but the only reason it had traction is because we dared to dream and to do. And launching a project for 30 days was pretty insane. Assuming that anyone would show up on October 1st of the first year and say, we don't know, we're just going to tell you things that you should do because we have worked with a collective and we're going to tell you to do it and you're going to do it. And then you're going to come back tomorrow and you're going to do it again. And you're going to do it every day. You're going to do something for 30 days when you don't do anything for 30 days other than eat and sleep and breathe. You don't go to school every day. You don't shower every day. You really, really don't. So this was unreasonable in its very essence. It is completely unreasonable to think that anyone would make this switch. This is the standard American diet. It's pathetic. This doesn't work. This is broken. But we accept it, right? Somebody does. Millions and billions of people do. So we said, okay, let's go there. Let's dare to dream. Let's say, join us on this journey. Let's be conciliatory. Go from conventional to conscious with us in food. Go look at packaged food. Look at, staple parts of your childhood school lunches. Look at something as simple as an apple. And we're going to expose you to reality. And we're going to see where you go with it. We're going to empower you with education, but you have to take that step. You have to be the citizen activist. You have to embrace it. Because I can stand here and talk. It's really, really easy for people to talk. But it's how that talk is received and how you all choose to act upon it that matters. So looking at personal care products, looking at cleaning, looking at the waste. We all have this massive waste issue. So these are the sorts of issues that I started to think about, that we as an organization started to think about. And I struggled with this very idea. I struggled with the thought that I was talking about consumerism, that I was telling people what to eat, what to drink their water out of, what they should fill their homes with when people don't have food, water, and shelter. You guys see where I went to school. This is an unbelievable campus. I'm unbelievably privileged to have grown up this way, to have the luxury to think about these issues, yeah. But it's not just about being consumer, right? It's about being a whole person and addressing all of these elements of who you are and tapping into the many different roles that you play, that you seamlessly transition back and forth from in your day-to-day. And so here I was. That's me. That's California. This is Marin County. And I had my world blown open. I went to my first international youth conference when I was 18 years old. And I showed up, didn't really have a clue what was happening. And somebody said, what do you do? And there were three of us sitting around. It was two boys and myself, one from sub-Saharan Africa and one from a Southeast island nation. And they were talking about corruption, and they were talking about poverty, and they were talking about child soldiers. And they said, what do I do? And I said, I'm an environmental activist. I work with a nonprofit. And I was, I'm not a very shy person. I don't get shy. And I was terrified to tell them what I did because it seemed like in the greater scheme of things, it really didn't matter at all. And they said, well, what are the things that you guys do? And I said, well, we talk about, food. We talk about toxicity and chemicals and health and waste. And they said, really? Oh, those issues are so relevant. We need that where we are. We really need things that young people feel they can do. I said, what? You need this sort of stuff when you're dealing with life and death and serious issues? They said, yeah. And it was really interesting for me to, think about these issues of toxicity and chemicals and, one planet and soil health and oceans and waste and these things that we do all share, but also just to think about the idea of action as revolutionary, of being able to break down these massive meta issues into tangible steps that young people can take. So that was what happened at One Young World. And I had the privilege, I strongly recommend it to you in college or entering college, to go abroad. I spent 4 terms living in Ghana, in Israel, in Spain, and Argentina. And I took this message of environmentalism with me. So I'm going to share a couple of those. In Haiti, after the earthquake, I went and a teacher looked at me. There we are in the hospital with, again, people who are dying, people that have no shelter. And he said, if I only had the materials, I'd teach the kids myself. And I thought, in a disaster zone like this, you're going to tell me that what you need are education supplies? So I started talking to him about post-consumer paper and FSC-certified pencils. And he said, that's what we need, because we have to plant the seeds of stewardship now. If we're going to build back, we're going to build back better. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can do that. So I went to Ghana, and I saw these plastic sachets all over the streets. And it struck me, clogging gutters, causing property damage in the beaches. And I said, somebody's got to be doing something. Yes, someone was doing something. Collecting these bags, sewing them together, selling them to people. They'd collected millions. So I went to him and I said, so how are you working with the schools? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's enough plastic here to last you multiple lifetimes in terms of raw materials. How are you working to shift this issue? And it never crossed his mind that not only did he have an army of volunteers that would go out into their schoolyards and run in before I was done talking to any class and bring the plastics, but they would actually change the habits to address the root causes of what was causing these problems in the first place. And then I went and I studied in the Middle East. And people are going, okay, they're killing each other. They've been killing each other for thousands of years. Why does environmentalism play into this, Erin? And he said, well, there's the first ever environmental education center that's about to open in the Palestinian Authority, to bring together Israeli, Palestinian, and Jordanian youth to talk about issues of shared resources as a means of conflict resolution. Talk about water, talk about food, talk about desertification, talk about biodiversity. Environmentalism entered into this social justice sphere in a place that people sort of cast off as being a permanent war zone. And this happened in Europe, it happened in Australia, it's happened in Brunei, that's in Colombia, in Mexico. All over the world, people care about these issues. This is not an elitist cause. This is the most basic, most essential of things we have, our planet. But it's not just enough to focus on our air, to focus on our soil, to focus on our water, to focus on our health. We have to think about the justice equation in this too. And I, like many of you, have been seeing these images coming out of the Middle East and coming out of the shores of Eastern Europe, of people washing up on shore because they have nowhere to go. Yes, are some of these people leaving their home because of the issues of climate change and environmental degradation? Yeah. Are some of the wars that they're escaping being fought over environmentalism? Yes. I can tie it all back to my green girl identity, but this is about humanity. This is about people losing touch with what is most essential in our world today, the recognition of human dignity, of honoring people, of safety, of health in so many aspects. And so I challenge you to think in today's world about these issues that are happening, and you don't have to just choose one. People put themselves in silos and they say, I am this, and I can't address the rest. And people look at me and go, Erin, but I've seen it on social media more than anywhere else. Basically, shut up and go back and talk about environmental issues. None of you are only one silo. You're human. And showing your humanity in times of crisis is the most important thing that you guys can do. And that doesn't mean that you have to get on a plane. Please don't get on the plane most of the time. Because it starts in your local community. It starts in your backyard. It starts at looking injustice right where you are. Because that's where you know the need best. That's where you can impact the most amount of change. And just remember that it is not about the massive mega scale of your impact. It's about believing in yourself. It's about doing, you are all incredible, incredible change makers, and that's enough. Doesn't mean pat yourself on the back and say, I'm done. But that means know within yourself that you're achieving the impossible. And that's beautiful, and there are people that will stand behind you because you do the most rare thing in the world. You've actually done. You've spent 30 days of doing, right? Smiles, okay? Uplifting. You've done it. You're there. You're doing what almost no one in the world does. They overthink, they talk, but they don't just make that one step. So keep on dreaming. Keep your eyes open. Keep on looking at what there is that you can do because you're fiercely capable. And assume this role because you're all activists, and I'm really, really, really proud to know you. Thanks, guys.